Hi there, I'm going to my review for BlacKkKlansman. So BlacKkKlansman is the new film by Spike Lee, and it is a real blistering attack on the Trump era. Now, obviously this film is not set in a Trump era at all, it's set in the 1970s, and it's about a black police detective who goes undercover in the Ku Klux Klan. But it draws so many parallels between the modern era and the time that the film is set. It has characters spewing rhetoric that is straight out of the Trump era, and it certainly takes its time to reinforce that either things have not changed or that the country has regressed. BlacKkKlansman even goes really far and actually features footage of Trump, so it really is openly aware and openly propagandistic in that sense. But I want to just kind of quickly mention something, which is the word propaganda here. BlacKkKlansman is propaganda in the sense that it has a political message and it's pretty overt about it. But can we just kind of say, one, all films are moralistic ultimately because they tend to endorse a good guy over a bad guy, so propaganda really exists in many forms and it doesn't mean it's bad. And secondly, I think BlacKkKlansman is really aware of it being propaganda, and I think it's really aware of it because it deliberately uses propaganda that supports the opposing view. Films like The Birth of a Nation, or even subtler efforts like Gone with the Wind, and repurposes those films. It brings them to the front and shows how those films were seen as truthful, were seen as genuine, even though we now acknowledge that those films are racist. And so this is certainly aware that it's pumping its message. Now, of course, you can review the rest of BlacKkKlansman and be fine with that. In fact, I think it's pretty obvious that we should be against the Ku Klux Klan and Nazism and white supremacy. But I just want to kind of say I don't think propaganda is necessarily bad. In fact, I think propaganda is interesting because we use that word to just mean films we disagree with more times than not. I think actually the vast majority of films are propaganda, and I think if we were going to start going down the road of all propaganda is inherently bad just by being propaganda, then I think we kind of get lost in the history of cinema because it's very difficult to find films with no moral values. And you can argue whether or not you should use moral values when judging a film, but I'm just saying, I'm not going to use propaganda in a negative sense in this review. BlacKkKlansman is very smart and it's very self-aware, and I appreciate that Spike Lee is aware of cinema history and he's using cinema history to make his point. He's proving, look, this is the culture that was so dominant, and to some extent kind of is, or maybe he's stretching a bit with that, but that's what he's trying to get across. And I think that is such a clever way to use the history of cinema to his advantage. It also makes a big point of the influence of blaxploitation films, and I think that's another thing that's fascinating and something that we also kind of forget about, and I think that's just why BlacKkKlansman is clever and self-aware. It also is just a fantastically made film. It's really genuinely engaging. It gets you angry because racism here is so unpleasant and so nasty, and I think that's kind of a point that needs to be emphasised, that the racism in this film is absolutely unforgivable. And I think what the film really shows is just how terrible that really was. And I think the film then manages to successfully draw a line between that and the present day. But it also manages to not be a completely downward oppressive film. I think he manages to bring a bit of levity to the subject. He manages to make you cheer for the good guys and like scoff and, you know, be really against the villains, and I think he does it in a way which is engaging and entertaining, and I think it's really engrossing. It's a very powerful film, undoubtedly. It's certainly one of the most significant films of this year. In fact, I think it's going to be one of the big important films of the year just because its message is so pertinent to today, because Spike Lee deliberately is making a point about that. And I think that although it's not the best film of the year, it's very entertaining. I was really hooked all the way through. I did not expect to find this film as wildly engaging as I did. I really went along with it for the entire film, and the film is incredibly untruthful to what actually happened. It's full of distortions and lies, and it messes around with timelines and the truth and all sorts of other things, and it creates new characters, and it does all sorts of silly things within its narrative. And I think it certainly is a film with storytelling, ups and downs, but it's really intense, it's really fascinating. I was really gripped by it, and regardless of any moral content, I just thought it was a really good and interesting film. The fact that it also happens to have this interesting parallel and is able to successfully draw political points which are very interesting, and which are very well developed and thought out, and they don't feel like a complete afterthought. They do feel like they've been carefully placed within the film, and this is going to be seen as one of the major works about the Trump era, I think. And I think there's no question that BlacKkKlansman is an absolute success. I think it works in being a political piece that it wants to send a message that it does so effectively. I think it's a very engaging film that almost anyone can kind of get into, and I think across the board BlacKkKlansman just really works. And so it just is very lively and well made and clever and witty, and it has a lot of elements of truth within it, but also elements of fakery, and I think it plays with those, and I think it pushes the boundaries, and I think it's all very self-aware. I don't think at any point this is trying to be a deceptive film. I think it's pretty clear what it is, and I think it's pretty clear about how it's distorting old propaganda. It's a rebuttal to the propaganda of the past. It's a rebuke of those ideas and how silly they were, and it's proposing new ideas, and I think that's what makes it a strong film. And I think BlacKkKlansman is just a great film. And I think it's really worth seeking out because of its importance and because of the fact that it is genuinely very well made. So it's very much fantastic, and that's what I think of BlacKkKlansman. Have you seen BlacKkKlansman? I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you have, so please leave me a comment. If you like this video, please give it a like. If you want to hear more of my reviews, you can subscribe. If you want to read more of my reviews, you can follow me on Letterboxd or Twitter, links in the description. Thank you for watching, and BlacKkKlansman, it's a great film.